It is really a beautiful, beautiful night here in Maryland. November 4, and you would think it's summer. Anyways, in this video here, we're going to review something that is quite interesting in terms of diagramming your networks. In many situations, you have different groups of people trying to access views of the network from a slightly different angle. So, for example, you might have users that are only interested in the physical representation of your network devices, such as a rack elevation view like we have here, or a cabling view, or a layer 1 view. And then maybe you have another group of users that are only interested in a logical view of the network, such as a layer 2 or a layer 3 view, like for example this here. So what happens when you have a device that a certain group wants to see in the physical view, and then the same device needs to be accessed by a different group in a logical view? Well, I'm going to talk about how to do that without duplicating efforts. In other words, without having to enter information twice. Gotta love these. So let's go back to my physical view here. I have a switch, and let's just say that this switch is gonna go to my layer 3 view. What I could do, of course, is I could copy, and then I could go to my layer 3 view and paste my switch, right? Of course I can do that. Notice how, by the way, we're using a different icon here. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Now here's the problem with this approach. I am actually creating a copy of the object. It's not going to be in sync with the original master switch. I can see that already because I have a dash copy here, name. If I change the status to something else, and then I go back to my physical view, this one is active, the other one is alarmed. Okay, forget about what the status really means. Of course I'm cheating here, I'm adding humanity, but that's beside the point. The important point here is that if you just create a simple copy, then soon enough those two objects that you would want to be the same are going to be out of sync. Even though you might think, oh, I didn't do much effort in creating this because look, I have all of the data. I simply did a copy paste. But the two objects are out of sync. Most tools that I know, this is really the only option that you have. And if you need two objects in two different views, well, you gotta basically do your homework and make sure that they're always in sync in terms of the data. Personally, I think that's not very convenient. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to create an alias of an object. So I'm going to copy the object. I'm going to go to my logical view. And instead of just pasting it, I'm going to paste this as an alias. I'm going to resize it here. So what's interesting about this alias concept, which by the way, you can tell that an object is an alias in NetTrain by the triangle here on the bottom right corner. What's interesting about the alias is that the feeds are not only just copied, they're actually obtained from the same master record. In other words, if now the contact person changes, and let's say the department that this object is assigned to changes. Let's say it changes to finance. If I now go to my master object, which by the way in NetTrain there's an easy way to do that, view master node, and I click on it, see? Now it's assigned to finance and the contact is Art Jones. So in other words, the two objects are really truly in sync. What exactly is so good about it? Well, You don't have to worry about keeping them in sync manually. And you can do that as many times as you want. So it's an interesting concept. It's basically aliasing, or cloning if you will. It's actually aliasing an object multiple times and drawing the information from one master record. Okay. Now what's also interesting is that I'm using a different icon here on my logical view. How do we do that in this particular case in NetTrain? We have a field here that uses a function that obtains the type of container objects. And we can have a rule such as if the container object is a cloud, then use a logical type icon. Otherwise, use a physical type icon. You can invent your own rule. This is just the rule that we happen to use here. So the nice thing about this is you get the best of all worlds. You get to have as many copies of your original object as you want. They're always in sync, yet they may use different icons. And finally, what's more interesting is that because these aliases are usually on different diagrams, in a logical diagram like this, you may want to use a logical type connection. For example, IP-MPLS. Whereas in my physical view, maybe you're going to be doing the cabling. For example, creating a power connection between that switch and, I don't know, a fuse panel, like this. So, my rack view has a cable connection. And then if I go to my logical view, that one has a logical connection. So, to summarize, if you have a project at hand where you have to represent devices in different types of views for different stakeholders that are showing information from a slightly different angle, but they are actually representing one and the same device, use aliases. At least that's how we call them in NetTrain. If you're using some other tool that is not NetTrain, make sure that you can do that. That you can represent an object in different types of views. That way you're avoiding duplication of efforts. Even nicer, if you can alias the objects yet use different icons to represent them, that's even better. And finally, make sure that you still have independence of connectivity. In other words, in a logical view, you're creating logical connections. In a physical view, you're creating physical connections. Hopefully this little demonstration was useful, and happy documenting.